Hey guys, John back in here, and welcome back to another WWW, also known as Who Would Win. And in this episode, we're going to be doing two DC characters, one from an alternate timeline, one from the present timeline. We're going to be putting up the original, the question, and the character that was based off the question, which is in Alan Moore's 1980, one of the best comics of all time, Rorschach. And this is going to be a fair fight, random encounter, no preparation, standard equipment, so they're not going to be having any extra armor, or they're not going to be able to get any help. So the question can't get any help from the Huntress or anything like that, and the Rorschach can't get any help from Night Owl or Dr. Manhattan. Starting this off, we have the question. Based in Hub City, Vic Sage made his mark as a highly outspoken and aggressive investigative journalist. Not long after starting his TV appearances, he began to investigate Dr. Barbie Twain. Sage was approached by Professor Aristotle Rodder, his former professor, currently a scientist. Rodder had told Sage about an artificial skin he had co-developed with Dr. Twain, called Pseudium. Pseudium was intended to work as an applied skin-like bandage with the help of a bonding gas, but it had an unforeseen toxicity which was sometimes fatal when applied to open wounds. Rodder and Twain agreed to abandon the project and parted ways, but Professor Rodder discovered that Dr. Twain had decided to proceed with an illegal sale of the invention to third world nations, regardless of the risk to human health. Sage resolved to stop him, but had no way of going after Dr. Twain without exposing himself. Rodder suggested that Sage use a mask made of pseudium to cover his famous features. Armed with information and, more importantly, a disguise, Sage eventually caught up with Dr. Twain, stopping the transaction and extracting a confession, then leaving Twain bound in pseudium. On television, Sage reported on Dr. Twain's illegal activities. Sage decided that this new identity would be useful for future investigations, and partnered with Professor Rodder, who supplied the pseudium and eventually modified the bonding gas to change the color of Sage's hair and clothing. The two men became good friends with Sage, affectionately referring to Rodder as Tot. Compared to other superhero comics of the Silver Age of comic books, the question was more ruthless in his methods. For example, when he was fighting some criminals in a sewer and knocked them into a deep and fast-moving water flow, he declined to pull them out despite their real danger of drowning. Instead, he left to notify the police to retrieve them in case they survived the ordeal. The question's most frequent foe was Max Bine, aka the Banshee. Introduced in Blue Beetle Volume 4, Number 2, August of 1967, Bine was the apprentice of a circus performer named the Flying Dundo. After designing a cape that enabled the ability to fly, Dundo was slain by his pupil, and Max Bane became the famous costumed Banshee. Using his mentor's invention to terrorize towns he crossed, the Banshee made his match when he reached Crown City, and sparred with the question on several occasions. The question briefly appeared alongside his fellow Charlton action heroes as part of the Sentinels of Justice, published by AC Comics. His powers and abilities consist of: he's a great acrobatic master, he's great at disguises, he has a genius level intellect, his hand-to-hand combat is well above normal and is highly advanced, has an indomitable will, he's skilled in interrogation and investigation, he's a skilled journalist, having been that before he became the question, and is one of the best characters in the DC universe for martial arts and is a master of dragon story Kung Fu. He's also a self-philosopher and a shamanism. He studied his city that he lived in to get more familiar with it. Walter Joseph Kovacs was born on March 21st, 1940, the son of Slava Kovacs, a prostitute, and an unknown father, only known to Kovacs as Charlie. His mother was frequently abusive and condescending towards him. In July 1951, at the age of 11, Kovacs became involved in a violent fight with 2 older bullies, and subsequently his living conditions were finally looked into. He was removed from his mother's care and put in the Lillian Charlton Home for Problem Children in New Jersey, where he rapidly seemed to improve, excelling at socialistics as well as gymnastics and amateur boxing. In 1956, after leaving the Charlton Home when he was 16, Kovacs took a job as a garment worker in a dress shop, which he found bearable but unpleasant, partly because he had to handle women's clothing. It was here that he acquired a certain dress fabric that he would later fashion into the mask he wears as Rorschach. In 1962, Kovacs scavenged the material from a rejected dress that had been specially ordered by a young woman with an Italian name. The Korvax learned how to cut and fashion the material successfully with heated implements. He soon grew bored with it, as it served him no real purpose at the time. 2 years later, when buying a newspaper on his way to work in March 1964, Korvax read about the rape and murder of Kitty Genovese, who he believed was the Italian woman who had rejected the dress. Ashamed by what he read about the unresponsiveness of her neighbours, Korvax became delusioned with the underlying apathy that he was inherent in most people. Inspired by Genovese's fate, Korvax returned home, made a face he could bear to look at in the mirror, from the dress's fabric, and began fighting crime as the vigilante Rorschach. Initially, Korvax left criminals alive, but bloodied for the police to arrest. Calling a card in the form of a Rorschach tested every crime scene. In the mid-1960s, he teamed up with Night Owl 2, a partnership which proved highly successful at battling organized crime. In 1975, an investigation into the kidnapping of a young girl named Blair Roach led to the transformation of the soft Korvax into the ruthless, uncompromising Rorschach. He tracked the kidnapping to a man named Gerald Grice. At Grice's shack, Korvax found evidence Grice had killed the girl and had fed her remains to his dogs. Discovering this, Rorschach suffered a psychotic breakdown and kills the dogs with Grice's meat cleaver, and waited for his arrival. When Grice returned, Rorschach hurled the corpses of the dogs through his windows, handcuffed him to a stove, and poured kerosene around him. Leaving Grice a hacksaw, Rorschach told him that his only chance to escape would be cutting off his own hand. Rorschach then set the shack on fire and left. No one emerged. During a later psychological evaluation, the vigilante stated that Korvax went into the shack, but then Rorschach came out. When the Keene Act was passed in 1977 to outlaw vigilantes, Rorschach responded by killing a wanted serial rapist, leaving his body outside a police station with a note bearing one word: never. Like most characters in Watchmen, Rorschach has no obvious superpowers. He merely has his strong will, peak human physical strength, and finely honed sense of timing and precision. Rorschach is very resourceful and creative, adapting ordinary household objects into tools or weapons, such as the use of a can of aerosol spray in a combination with multiple matches to set fire to a police officer, and throwing ground black pepper to blind another police officer. During a confrontation at Moloch's house, during the series, he is seen to use cooking fat, a toilet bowl, a cigarette, a fork, and his jacket, all as weapons. He's also shown using a coat hanger as a makeshift measuring device. He owns a gas-powered grappling gun which he uses to climb buildings, and once as a makeshift harpoon gun against a police officer, as seen in Chapter 1, which was designed and built by Night Owl 2. Rorschach is well versed in street combat, gymnastics, and boxing. He's extremely stoic and has shown by his indifference to pain and discomfort. He even tolerated Antarctic temperatures while wearing only a trench coat over street clothes, without complaining or even commented on the severe cold. Despite his mental instability, Rorschach is extremely intelligent and was described as tactically brilliant and unpredictable by Night Owl, and shows a marked affinity for detective work, as evidenced by his ability to locate the comedian's costume in his apartment when the police could not. He's skilled at lockpicking, although a running gag throughout the series has him simply forcing Night Owl's front door to talk to him. How Korvax was able to see through the fabric of his trademark mask is never explained in the comic books. However, masks with similar behaviors are available as costumes that people actually do see through. Now moving on to the final verdict, the bit that you've all been waiting for. And I'm going to have to say this has probably been the hardest who would win that I've had to do of all time, because both of the characters are extremely similar, with Rorschach actually being based off the question. So it was very difficult, but I have my final verdict, and my final verdict is going to have to be the original The Question. And here's why. The Question is a much higher intellect than Rorschach, meaning that he has the intellectual advantage over Rorschach. Although being equals in combat, with the Question having the higher intellect and not needing to rely on different things to help him out during combat, the Question has been known to take things down using his own hands, whereas Rorschach quite often uses different aerosol cans and stuff like that to actually get the job done. Although he is a very highly skilled combatant with his bare hands, the Question is far simply better. The Rorschach has got more experience, but the Question has been known to literally hold his own against a Lady Shiva, and he's been trained by one of the best martial artists in the world. He did not beat Lady Shiva, but he stood his ground against Lady Shiva. And since Rorschach could not beat Ozymandias, which has been very similar to Lady Shiva in martial arts skills, he can simply not beat the question. The question is far more superior in that matter. And with that said, I hope you guys did like this video. Make sure to drop a like, comment, and subscribe. I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.